Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, coming to you live from the quantum realm. And with that, today's topic is all about quantum computing and everything else quantum. Maybe not necessarily the quantum realm where I'm coming from, but nonetheless, we're going to be talking about quantum computing and what that means to so many different industries and intersecting technologies as well. And for many, this may be a new buzzword, and some, this may be a term that you've just heard as a buzzword. But we brought together two of the biggest experts in this industry and who have been regular guests here on VCTV to talk about why this is not just a buzzword, why this is something that's happening now and what's to come and what's already happening in this space. So get ready. Strap in. We've got a lot to talk about today. But before we do, a big thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in. If you're liking what you hear today, there's a big red subscribe button down there. Give that a click and tune in to every episode and all episodes of VCTV every single day as we bring together the best and the brightest, like those you'll hear from today, and other venture capitalists and experts from around the world to talk about different technologies, industries, and regions about what's happening on the ground to what's to come in the near future. And if you'd like to be an investor and speak on one of our panels or shows, do reach out to the team and or myself. We'd love to find the right spot for you. Entrepreneurs, I've said it once, I said it twice, I'll say it again. There is a virtual stage here for you at VCTV to also get up on, pitch us your company product or service in the areas that we're speaking about, and get real-time feedback from us as investors and founders focused on your area. Build foundational relationships with each of us as it's a family here at VCTV, and also get exposure to our live audience. Reach out to the team and or myself. We'd love to find the right spot for you. Last but not least, a big thank you to the LA Token team and Maria for making VCTV possible every single day. With that, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, coming to you live from the quantum realm. And let's go ahead and introduce each and every one of our guests. Irfan, welcome back to the show, a huge expert in this space. We've done a keynote together, or a fireside chat, I should say, around today's topic. You've written about this. Give the audience a little bit of a 101 on you. And we'll go to Gary next.
Thanks, Kyle, and thanks everyone for tuning in. And happy to be in this panel here with Kyle and Gary. This is a very interesting topic, and I think it's a topic that we should be talking about now, and we should be talking about in the future. So hype aside, definitely this is something for us to talk about as well as learn more about. So happy to facilitate. My name is Irfan. I'm the managing director of Irfan Holdings. So I spend a good amount of time in the investment side, but also I have deep background in research and facilitating research. So this is where, exactly how this topic fits into my realm of things, where, my view of things is that I like to be in the cutting edge of the developments as well as technology. And for that to happen, of course, finance is a very important part, but also understanding the research and seeing how the research is progressing is also very important. So that said, I'll pass it over to Gary.
Sounds good to me.
Yep, go for it, Gary.
Yeah. So my name's Gary Fowler, and I'm a serial entrepreneur, over 30 years worth of experience, 16 companies, 2 unicorns. I love AI, but I also love quantum computing. So I guess I'm a qubit kind of guy, and so what can I say? Anyhow, I believe, the future is today. The companies that are out there looking at these cutting edge, leading edge technologies, they're going to define our future, define cybersecurity, define the massive amount of data sets that we can go after, be able to look at things in an entirely different viewpoint. That time is now. And the time for the investment is not tomorrow, it's today. The time for startups to look at it is today. I'm particularly interested, and I wrote several articles. I'm just literally today writing about cybersecurity and quantum computing. But I wrote one on AI and quantum computing in Forbes, because I believe that, with this superpower capability, the world's going to dramatically change in the data set. So can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, I
Yep.
see. I thought everyone was talking there for a second. Anyhow, that's basically it. And I look forward to the show. It's good to see you, Kyle. I haven't seen you for a long time, like 20 minutes.
It's a, you know, it's a family here, as you've said before as well. It's always a pleasure to have both of you, and also to see each other so rapidly as we do. And to the entrepreneurs, when we talk about, you know, joining us here on VCTV and getting a chance to build relationships, it's very true to form of being able to communicate and work with each of all of us. So with that being said, guys, I want to come to you both around what is quantum computing and why is this so important? Why does it matter now? And why is it no longer a buzzword? I mean, we've been hearing about the idea of, you know, Moore's law and singularity, and this idea that computing processing power is getting more rapidly and going faster and faster. We'll stop there. Now it's time. But why? What is it, and why is it time? Irfan, let's start it with you.
Great. No, thanks, Kyle. And so for starters, you know, I think it is important for us to remember that the way we are, you know, sorry about the noise on the background. It's my kid. But that said, you know, I think we are in a time where we have developing technologies, you know, that are at a point that we need to take another leap, right? And when it comes to processing, when it comes to data size, you know, in order to deal with this problem, right? And we are coming into more complex problem. We cannot deal these problems in a linear fashion. And I think this is a very important thing, right? I mean, the computers that we are using today are linear. Quantum computer, I mean, the concept of quantum computer existed much earlier because, you know, at the end of the day, the computer is the machine which is brought to life from the science and the physics behind it. And through physics, we understand that various components of what we are using today could be placed in and could be understood through a much more wider realm. Now, why is this important, right? I mean, today we when it comes to security perspective, when it comes to the complexity of certain simulations that we are talking about, simulations of not only of outer worldly things, but also simulations of what we're going to need. Let's say, for example, trying to understand the human brain, for example. These are advances that we're thinking about when it comes to humanity, advances that will help us cure diseases, among other things, right? So of course, there are alternative technologies that are there that are pushing, you know, in certain facets, but a machine that can process things faster, efficiently, and can also give further inference, it's like, a holy grail, right? So, which is why, you know, there has been so much hype around this technology to begin with, you know, just like any other interesting technologies that has been developing. I mean, Gary can attest this more than anybody because he comes from the realm of the AI world. I mean, AI had very similar trajectory about a decade ago, and blockchain, you know, just about a few years ago, and among other things, right? So, and I think, you know, this is why, you know, we do get excited because, you know, this research will lead us to what Gary just mentioned, to the future, right? When we enter a roadblock, we look for new ways to solve that problem. And these kind of technologies enables us to do that. Are we there yet? Well, I mean, it's about a perspective, right? I mean, technology, the quantum computing has already some very achievable, I would say, places where they can bring return. And then there is the long-term aspects of it. So we can discuss more around that, but I'll pause right here and say that, you know, it is, you know, it is quintessential that we enable this technology. And of course, you know, everybody understands that. And, you know, that's why there is a race around that, which is why there will be a hype around that. But that doesn't change the fact that even besides the hype, there would be some realistic thing coming out of that. But of course, there would be things that will be also falling out of this. So that's the natural evolution of technology. So I'll pass it over to Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, so I mean, this is like, I'm a country boy. Irfan knows that, and Kyle knows. I'm a country boy from Pennsylvania, so grew up in a little village of less than 500 people, and I take it's simple. So I mean, just look at it this way. So computers today are binary. We're now changing it to qubits. So imagine having a capability to have multiple states at one time, and it just dramatically, this is not evolutionary, it's revolutionary. It dramatically unlocks more computing power than ever imagined. So imagine a system, there's different levels. People have said different things. I've heard up to 100 million times faster than a conventional computer. Companies like IBM, companies like Google, companies like Microsoft have already started the journey down quantum computing. It's going to change everything. So, and look at AI. What's it about in AI? And I know we've talked about Irfan, Kyle, myself. It's about the data sets. Well, we're not talking about, taking 10,000 years to process data sets. You're talking about seconds, minutes, hours. It's incredible, the massive amount of data. Think about it. I just recently did a presentation for the largest pharmaceutical companies in Europe. And I was asked to talk about artificial intelligence's impact on drug discovery. Think about how we've been forced since March, Kyle, since I've been on the VCTV. Think about how many changes have taken place. They've had to rapidly advance to come up with COVID-19 cures. So it wasn't about the bench, it's about having the capability to do modeling. Now this is going to change everything. So, if we look at it today, we are in the forefront of a dramatic change. I would say in civilization, because this AI's electricity, well, this is like, traveling through a wormhole. This is an entirely different kind of experience. So what it does is, quantum computing, what it's going to do is it's going to dramatically improve the natural language processing capability, which allows you to dive deep into analyzing data, right? That's where this thing really starts to come into play. So the algorithms become more aware of content, and that's really where it is. So imagine, and we do with Eva, my company, ability to, we look at sentences and phrases and keywords, but now massively look at it. So it's going to be interesting, Kyle. I know we talk about cybersecurity and quantum computing. I mean, I can see a world where there's two quantum computers going at each other, right? Okay, it's like chess. It's my turn. It's going to change it at that degree. And then think about space travel, being able to travel through, your friend Christopher Altman says there's 6 billion Earth-like planets within the Milky Way galaxy and 200 trillion galaxies. We got a long way to go. We're going to have to do a lot of modeling to find out where, when, and how we need to get there. So I love it. I love the impact it's going to have. We're talking about living to 150. Now to be able to process it, to understand what those permutations and combinations look like, so we can get there. So it's a dawn of a new frontier. Healthcare, unlock for finance capabilities, fraud detection, because it's pattern recognition. So, we always say a quantum leap forward. Well, it's finally here.
which is very exciting. I mean, Irfan, anything to add? I mean, this is, as Gary said, this is here now. What are you seeing as kind of the current state and where things are today to further that in other areas of intersection?
No, first of all, I do agree with Gary over there. I mean, he hit all the right points. But also I would add, a few things to that. I mean, the most obvious things, of course, when it comes to security, right? I mean, that's why I say that there are certain near-term already usage of quantum or quantum encryption, right? So we're talking about encryption, right? So in encryption, cybersecurity are the most relevant area because it's more and more becoming, complex. And as I say, over my career, I have worked with a lot of financial institutions also and building systems for them. a lot may not appear in the newspaper as well as in public media, but there's a constant threat of cyber attacks to these institutions as well as their systems. I mean, it's a common principle within the cybersecurity realm is that you take proactive measure than a reactive measure. And I think one of the proactive measure, apart from of course structuring your system so that you have less loose ends or gates to for attackers to kind of like come into your system, but also having a far advanced systems altogether. And I think this is key. And what Gary just mentioned, two quantum computers going one against another, I'm sure the government is very well aware about this, and this is why there is a race between the two of the major nations, right? So I think this is
I don't need
one
any of
point.
those phone calls, Irfan.
All right, Gary. Yeah, but
Sometimes you
besides
can know
that,
too much, if you know what I mean.
yeah. So, but besides that, I think I'm going to come down to a more simpler things, right? And on the simpler end of things, let's talk about climate change. Let's talk about weather, right? So, we of course, we know that climate change is here right now, and the perils of our situation, or our Earth is much more, I would say very something that we should be quite aware about, that which is going to affect our lives and our next generation and the generations after that. One of the main thing when it comes to whether it's climate change research, meteorology, or among other things, is that even though we have science where we do certain forecast prediction and all these things, scientifically speaking, they're too much variable in nature and also in the world. And and even with statistical modeling and the probabilistic modeling, we're always choosing a best case scenario based on the tools that we have, and the tools are limited. We're not able to factor in all the variables, which is why we cannot get like near 100% like forecast of anything, right? I think when it comes to quantum computing, one of its key strengths is simulation, actually, and this simulation would allow you to factor in these variables that we are not able to today in today's system factor in. What this would mean for us, it would give, as I say, not only utilizing the data sets that we have, but also it enables us to acquire newer data sets. And then, in other words, we could come up with better inference. And this inference would be a tool for us to plan, because as the world goes complex, the perils of the world also become more and more real. And for that, for us to be able to avoid that, and at scale, because our population is growing, our resources are becoming scarce, and among other things, right? And management of whether it's smart city or whatever you want to call it, this inference will be critical for us for our sustainability. So I think at this point, and especially in today's context that we are talking about, I mean, we are facing a major global challenge in the world, the pandemic itself. I mean, we're talking about the pandemic, forget the vaccine, forget the how just to be able to understand the whole context of how it's spreading, and also at the same time pinpointing situations to better alter this scenario. A quantum computer is best equipped to handle these things. So yeah, so I just wanted to add this point, Gary, because I think on the near term, this is a need for us, not just for supremacy, but for our survival. So yeah, over to you, Kyle. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, Gary, anything else to add? But also, I mean, where do we go from here? I mean, where does AI, where does blockchain, where do 5G, some of these areas that we've been talking about pretty regularly here on VCTV, how do these all play a role into quantum? Because for me, quantum computing and that processing power that both you and Irfan are mentioning, this is going to power the next decade and take us into where we go from there. And we've talked about it, how this next decade is going to be so foundational to so many parts of our lives and our future. But quantum plays I'd say, the central role of all of that. So what are you seeing as how these other technologies intersect with quantum and quantum computing?
I mean, I just wrote an article about blockchain is obsolete with quantum computing that was published. But, you know, the one thing, Irfan, when you talk about weather, I have some specific domain expertise in that area. One of Einstein's students, his name was Irving Crick, who passed away at 89. I had the pleasure of working with him for about 6 months. And he was looking at weather as a recurring pattern that occurred over time. It was algorithms over time and not necessarily linear, which is an approach that most modern day meteorologists take. He actually did Operation Argument in the invasion to Normandy. He was working with Hap Arnold, General Hap Arnold, that kind of guy. So I had the pleasure of meeting him later in life in his 80s. And it was just fascinating about it. So I agree with you. I mean, in terms of weather, I was thinking about it yesterday, actually. If we applied quantum computing to weather with some of the changes, because you can forecast what impact the weather is going to have in a particular area based on global warming. He told me this, God, 15 years ago, right? 20 years ago, he was telling me, Gary, this is going to happen. The Gulf Stream's going to slow down, and people weren't really buying off on it at the time. So I agree with you. The other thing is it really affects all parts of our life. It affects marketing. It affects healthcare. It affects drug discovery, impacts every part of our life. And, you know, Kyle, you're right. I just was looking at so the current population of the planet is about 8 billion. Now it's forecasted to be 13 billion by 2100. But 13 billion, there's not a lot of land left, and we're going to have water wars, right? We're going to have to look beyond to the stars. In order to do those kind of significant calculations to help us get there, you know, to the nearest planet, your friend Christopher was telling me his project at MIT is on the teleportation of quantum particles. So we had a pretty interesting discussion about that. So I'm excited. It's just every walk. This is going to change. This is a difference between fire in the cavemen and what happened after that, right? How our lives changed. And then it's even bigger than, you know, AI is a new electricity or electricity at the beginning of the 20th century. It's much bigger because it's taken us beyond, you know, our planet to be able to explore things that we've never even dreamed of before. So the question is, you know, when you start to this goes back to some of my articles about emotion, AI, and compassion, you know, but when you have a quantum computer, you got to be careful. You're not inventing Skynet, like seriously inventing Skynet, because if it gets, you know, my friend David's house has been writing me lately, and he's got AI in his house, right? And it communicates, and the kind of things it's talking about, you know, are you a robot or what are you, right? Those kind of things. So, you know, we got to be careful what we ask for. And when we open this new Pandora's box, we got to, you know, just be careful what you ask for, because it's coming true. And let's understand it, and let's figure out what the implications are going to be. I think there's a lot of goodness, but of course, you know, the bad guys get a hold of quantum computer, they're going to rule the world, rule it completely. Because imagine, you know, there's no cybersecurity system out there that's going to be able to defend events today. If a quantum computer goes after the grid in any country today, they're down. It's over, right? So if they want to shut the internet off, I mean, for all intents and purposes, you know, the pipes in and the pipes out, it could lock them up. So, you know, talk about denial of service. You start getting a quantum computer coming in, you know. So those are I wrote about it with the former CSO of Apple in 2017. I was talking about the future with AI, but this is an entirely different model. I love it. I'm excited about it. I think there's amazing opportunities for startups and investors, and they better get in now, because it's going to be too late. You know, you wait 2 years or 5 years, said, oh, I just want to see what happens with it. It's going to be too late. Get in now.
Agreed. Irfan, anything to add? And also, I know you've been working on a number of projects in this space. We were talking about a few offline, so would love to hear not just anything else to add to Gary's, but also what you're working on and where those are leading towards.
Oh, great. No, thanks, Gary, for giving us those very important points. I think there's one thing that I'll pick up from Gary's point is that, and I think that's also very relevant, is regulation or regulatory framework. When it comes to the quantum computer, I think it's important to start thinking them right now. All the questions that Gary just raised, let's assume like a quantum computer got in the hands of those who we don't want them to have it, but it's an eventuality, it's a possibility, and so it's very important to prepare for this. Of course, it's the case with any technology, right? I mean, who got the nuclear science and at first, and it gives an advantage to almost everybody, right? But I think the point is that it's very important to start thinking around the regulatory frameworks around that, because as you may know, we have a mess of a situation with this binary computer that Gary is talking about. Talk about data privacy, all these issues that we are having from major institutions, right? And major institutions are part of this. So what happens, with a quantum computer? It's like we are absolutely defenseless. I mean, we're not talking about, just, because I usually put, all sorts of duct tapes in my microphone, in my laptop, in my in the camera and all this thing. That's not going to work anymore. So the question is, well, how are we going to deal with that? So I think this is an important thing to start thinking about right now. Also, as Gary mentioned, and I think, I'll talk about a little bit more around some of the other things that's happening, is that as we are developing this technology, I think of course, there are challenges that includes, corrections, etc. But I think the more on the detail side, when we are thinking about quantum computer, we also have to think about this is a completely different realm. It requires different form of handling. In fact, when it comes to the hardware level, and I always like to talk about hardware always, because hardware would power the software eventually, or do anything with it. We need a whole new set of hardware to operate quantum computer. As you may know, quantum state is not like an easy state for one to achieve. And in order for you to create quantum state, even with the physics, and I'm sure Gary can tell that more, that there are certain things that we still don't understand. So the question is, it's kind of like the particle accelerator. Would we, create a black hole in this Earth? So
yeah, exactly. And they say that, I mean, that has happened, but we haven't been able to see it. But those are issues. Be careful what you ask for, right?
Right. And again, and I think this is something that we should be considering. And so in order to build that, we have to be looking into building the hardware. Another important aspect of that hardware is power, and I think I always talk about that, and which is why I will be talking a little bit more on that. Is that power is at the root of everything, and when it comes to, I'm sure, Kyle, you can tell, I mean, today we are, talking about blockchain technology, which is also a major supercomputer, a global supercomputer, if the way we can use it. It requires tremendous amount of power, and that power, the energy ratio is not necessarily sustainable. Today all the mining station that we are having in Iceland and other places, it's not going to cut it. When it comes to quantum computer, it's a similar situation. What kind of power generation are we talking about? What kind of power requirement are we talking about? How are we going to continuously, be able to do that? And again, will that power be through sustainable means? Because these are questions that you have to play around with. But again, one thing that I have confidence in is the ability for us to innovate. and that has always taken a step forward, and it's not always 2+2 situation, because as Gary rightfully mentioned, we have had several quantum leaps when it came to various technology. you know it's the computer that we use is not a factor of 2+2 that was created by Conrad Zuse, or Turing, for example. It was a quantum leap, and so with quantum computer, I have full belief that that is also the same. It's going to be the same. And when it comes to in my association with various university and academia, and most universities are taking this very seriously, important institutions are all working towards it, so we could see potentially some breakthrough, and hope that we would be able to tackle other technologies. And you mentioned rightfully singularity. It would start making sense, the more this technology develop. I mean, for us, I can already sense it, because I'm sure Gary can say to those who we're at the cutting edge of innovation, but also the investment. It's just it's not what, it's a matter of when, and when it's going to happen. So, and we can see that happening. So yeah, on to you.
I love it. Well, with that being said, I mean, here I am. I'm a founder, I'm an investor. Where should I be placing my bets? Where should I be building when it comes to, or how should I be thinking about how quantum will impact my industry over the next 10 years? Because we know this is going to be here and this is going to be here to stay, as we've all talked about, but where should I be playing, right? As an investor, where should I be looking at making the bets? As a founder, where should I be building? But also, how may this impact the future of my business? So Gary, let's start with you. Opportunities.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is not easy. I don't know, building a quantum computer is not a simple task, right? Because you're talking about controlling photons. And, so we've got a whole different kind of architecture that, the only people today that can do it are large companies like Google, IBM, maybe Siemens, National Laboratories. So this is not one of the other things, the easiest thing to build. And then the other thing, unless you got a couple $100 million sitting around that you want to just blow. So in terms of the opportunity, what I suggest for each company today, start exploring it. There's going to be opportunities come out, I believe, like time sharing on quantum computers, because the big companies are going to look at this kind of like an Amazon Web Services on steroids. And they're going to say, oh, we've got this new quantum Q compute, get it on Amazon. And they're going to start selling those services because you're going to have one massive, and I see Irfan is smiling because it's, you're going to timeshare on these. You're going to get a part of the quantum computer, and that's where companies are going to go, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves. But I suggest for companies today, I now get a lot of calls from innovation executives at large companies. Start looking at quantum computer, because when you put the two of those together, things are going to change, dynamically change. Start running it, start developing those relationships today. Don't wait till it's too late. It's going to impact each and every one of your businesses. Startups that are out there that have, that are doing research at institutions around the planet, it's a good time. Start partnering with commercial companies that could, pay for this. It's not going to be cheap. The challenge is it's, talking about $50–100 million from my perspective. It's going to cost a lot of money to be able to build it, at least initially. But then the world's ahead of us.
Absolutely.
The universe is ahead of us, not even the world, Kyle. The universe.
There you go. There you go. Irfan, anything to add on that, and where people should be focusing their time and money?
Right. No, thanks, Gary, for sharing that. For me, I use the term quantum logistics. For me, of course, I wouldn't say that the way I think, and I spend a good amount of time watching Animal Planet, right? So my strategy is always around kind of like circling your prey, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the most obvious item is of course the quantum computer, right? And that's the holy grail. And this is a strategy and Kyle is aware about that I also apply in space technology, right? The obvious one, of course, if you can build a spaceship that can go to Mars or Uranus or somewhere out of the solar system. But then there's the logistics, right? The logistics that will play to make that happen. Or when that happens, it's gonna need it, right? So for me, this is what I'm doing around quantum logistics, right? So the companies that I look into is essentially going to facilitate quantum computing in right now or in the coming day, starting with hardware, and I'm saying again and again, hardware will be the key for this device, of course, and I'm very much in touch with some of the major institutions who are running the quantum research and with the researcher because of my research experience as well as background. But again, at times, you hear also this noise, because it's more of a status thing for a large institution at times, and as they're working on this. But I think the important thing is that looking towards the logistics, and sometimes those logistics doesn't need to be hundreds of $1 million worth. I'm just saying, it's a very intimate item that's gonna change even the quantum product. And then also the other aspect of that is around as I mentioned, power, right? Power generation. I mean, this is energy sector is something that I heavily look into, and products that will facilitate this computer. And cybersecurity is another area. Encryption in general, and we're talking about layers and layers of complex encryption. Today, and I spent a good amount of time also in the defense, right? So today the requirements are very complex communication encryptions also from the on those areas. So those are also obvious places where technologies rapidly develop, and it has been the case with other computers also over the course of the last 60 or 70 or 100 years, in fact. So yeah, I would look into those logistical areas, hardware, software. In fact, AI, just like Gary mentioned, NLP and semantics is a very important area for me. The future of natural language processing as well as understanding data sets from social communication is a very interesting area. And these area these are direct intersection point with quantum computing. So I would also look into products such as that and companies like that. So I know like this is a more like a high level kind of thing, and I wanted to keep it high level because at this point I think it's not, I would say, relevant to just talk about quantum products, because quantum encompasses other technologies, and it is also dependent on other technologies and the development of those technologies. So yeah.
Wonderful. Well, again, gentlemen, thank you both so much for all the thoughts and insights today. And I want to come to each of you for any closing thoughts that you want to leave the audience with about the future of where this goes in terms of quantum today, and also where they can find you to continue this conversation, as there's so much more to talk about. Gary, let's start with you.
Yeah, so you can reach me, Gary Fowler, on LinkedIn. You can get me on Twitter. I have several shows that I do, and I'm happy to, so tune in. GSD Venture Studios is my company. We curate companies and help them to go global. So where are we? I mean, this is as I said, this is a dawn of a new frontier, an uncharted area. We don't, even the quantum computer scientists don't understand exactly where it's gone yet. But the good news is, that's the beauty about humanity, that we do check, we understand, and we move forward. So it's a dawn of a new era. Look at it and invest and be part of it. Thank you, Kyle.
I love it. Thank you, Gary. Irfan, to you, closing thoughts. Where can everyone find you?
Yeah, everyone can reach me over LinkedIn as Sheikh Mohammed Irfan. And when it comes to reaching out, again, as I say, I spent a long time in research. I personally, taken technology from the lab to commercialization. I understand this field very well. If you're working on something, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be there to facilitate. But at the same time, I'm also aware about the fact that certain institution who files in so many number of patents, that kind of research that doesn't lead to anything is not what I'm looking for. So I think that's a very important thing to remember. And this, and as Gary rightfully put, this kind of technology at this stage needs support, the right kind of support, and in all sorts of ways. And investment is number one. So I wouldn't wait to actually make the investment before the train leaves. But at the same time, I should also take the time to understand this technology, because today as investors, you cannot function the same way as you used to function before. That being a traditional investor, you have liquidity and you just come in and take ownership of a company. No, if you want to make sure a technology such as this that has to evolve, you got to participate also with all the support that you have. And I think this is critical. So I would suggest to any investor, or to most importantly, understand it so that you can rightfully support it, not just putting in the green box in there. But that said, thank you so much. Thanks, Kyle, and always a pleasure speaking with Gary. And thank you to the audience for tuning in.
Awesome. And again, thank you, Gary and Irfan, for everything that you shared today. And to your audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard, make sure you click the subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Do reach out to be on a show like today and join Gary and Irfan speaking about quantum, blockchain, artificial intelligence, energy, and everything else in between. We'd love to have you. Do reach out to the team and or myself, and we'll find the right spot for you. Entrepreneurs, there is also a virtual stage here for you to join, to get on VCTV, to pitch us, each as investors and entrepreneurs. Focus on your area to get real-time feedback, along with building relationships with us and our live audience as well. So do reach out. We'd love to find the right set of investors and opportunity for you. A big thank you to the LA Token team and to Maria for making VCTV possible and bringing us all together every single day, all day, 24/7, 365 here on VCTV. With that being said, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. You can find me at Kyle Ellicott on all social media, and you can find Gary and Irfan as well on social media, as we live our lives digitally more than ever, 24/7, 365, and we'd love to continue the conversation. Just make sure you add some context. With that being said, we'll be back here tomorrow with more VCTV. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.